And finally again as poetry in my own vain effort to unpack what solidarity must mean for us in Sri Lanka, from us to Palestine today. Here's the poem then. Palestinian poet, novelist and teacher Hiba Abu Nada wrote I Grant You Refuge in Arabic on October 10th and is amongst the last pieces of she composed before being killed in her home by an Israeli airstrike on October 20th, 2023, 10 days later. She was only 32 years young. Note, when I read the poem, note the gentleness of tone, the heroism of spirit, the utter absence of any pettiness, any cry for revenge, even in the face of every atrocity known to humankind. At the same time, the poem disallows any agency to the perpetrators of genocide, thereby denying them any place in her world to which they have no right of access, even as they cause carnage. I don't need to emphasize here that we are in the presence of a humbling greatness. Alas, I believe that nothing can transcend deliberate, wanton, callous murder performed over and over and over again. But if anything could, it would be something like this. I grant you refuge, an invocation outside the house. Their mother's tears are now doves, following them, trailing behind every coffin. I grant the father refuge, the little one's father who holds the house upright when it tilts after the bombs. He implores the moment of death, have mercy, spare me a little while, for their sake I have learned to love my life. Grant them a death as beautiful as they are. I grant you refuge from hurt and death, refuge in the glory of our siege here in the belly of the whale. Our streets exalt God with every bomb. They pray for the mosques and the houses. And every time the bombing begins in the north, our supplications rise in the south. I grant you refuge from hurt and suffering. With words of sacred scripture, I shield the oranges from the sting of phosphorus and the shades of clouds from the smog. I grant you refuge in knowing that the dust will clear, and they who fell in love and died together will one day laugh. Moin Besaiso, the Palestine poet, writing much earlier, speaks of the problem more polemically, conceptually, in ways we can relate to in our worlds, our context. His anger is brittle, sharp, but never petty. He writes, my country that was home has become an argument. Don't blame the rifle that it died without leaving a will. On a cloud I wrote, down with censorship, and they confiscated the sky. The yawning, unbridgeable gulf between Israeli soldier and Arab civilian is powerfully captured in this account by Besaiso's wife, describing how she fled sometime after her husband's death, one of many departures from many homes. She writes, I took a very small number of photographs, ones that I was afraid would fall into Israeli hands because it would be dangerous for the people in them. Later, our building porter who witnessed it told me that after we had left, Israeli soldiers burst into the house and took a large photo of Moin, the Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish, and Yasser Arafat, which hung in the entrance of the house, and they shot at it. Imagine the hatred, the ignorance that makes soldiers shoot at photographs. Yet Besaiso remains optimistic, defiant. In a poem titled, We Will Not Die, he says, yes, we will not die, but we will uproot death from our land. Yes, we will not die. Yes, we will live, even if the shackle ache from our bones, and even if the whips of tyrants tear us apart, even if they set fire to our bodies, yes, we will not die, but we will eradicate death from our land. The same poet, Darwish and Besaiso, recognize that the struggle is intergenerational, millennial. but they do not lose hope or courage in their resistance. The poets have their own refrain. Our siege is long, they say. Our siege is long. We shall bake the stone. We shall knead the moon. We shall finish our journey upon this beautiful day. Our siege is long. As I said, the poem, now the arguments. As Ahmed Alabi says, to know Palestinian history is to experience endless deja vu. Every testament to the Palestinian condition speaks indelibly to the present. This is not only because their opponents persist in seeking their dispossession and death, but also because those opponents shamelessly maintain the same idioms of justification. So let me look at some of these idioms of justification. I will make only 3 points, given that my time has been cut from 45 minutes to 20. These points seek to address 3 core arguments produced ad nauseam to justify and defend the indefensible. First, with the often repeated statement echoing the UN Secretary General, nothing justifies the 7th October terror attacks by Hamas and the taking of hostages, and nothing justifies the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. I will add, and nothing can ever justify using weapons of mass destruction provided by Western regimes to kill, maim, and destroy an unarmed civilian population forced to live and die in what are in effect concentration camps. Let's look at the first argument, Israel's right to defend itself. Israel, we are told, is in a war of defense against Hamas, not against Palestinian people. It's wrong to laugh, but you can only laugh at that. It is vomit-worthy and blatantly travesties the truth. The right of self-defense can only be invoked when a state is threatened by another state, which is not the case. As Albanese, the UN rapporteur, says, Israel does not claim it has been threatened by another state. It has been threatened by an armed group within an occupied territory. It cannot claim the right of self-defense against a threat that emanates from a territory it occupies, from a territory kept under belligerent occupation. How is complete siege, blocking the entry of food and fuel for around over 2 million people, termed self-defense? Israel's occupation of the land and settlement it has built have been ruled as illegal by the UN Stop Court, of course. Is killing unarmed civilians, children, the aged? The youngest to die was a 1-day-old infant, and the oldest a 97-year-old woman. Is this self-defense? Whose laws are these? Whose principles? Not ours, yet we look on helplessly. The second point, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Yet, anti-Semitism is only a valid criticism if it discriminates against Jews, not Arabs, who are equally Semitic. If I were to identify the etymology, Semites were originally members of any of the peoples mentioned in Genesis 10:21 to 31 as descendants of Shem, one of the sons of Noah, traditionally interpreted to include Hebrew, Arameans, Assyrians, and Arabs. Subsequently, also a member of any of the people who speak or spoke a Semitic language, and this is from 1598 onwards. Jews and Arabs are Semites, sharing more than they have chosen to remember. Why is then this discursive denial? Zionism, if you know, originally is to advocate or support a movement among Jewish people for the re-establishment of a Jewish nation in Palestine. Later, an advocate or supporter of the development and protection of the state of Israel. So, the argument, which is the third issue, that anti-Zionism is essentially anti-Semitic, is something that we need to look at very carefully. It is based on 3 principles, 3 pillars. The first is that opposing Zionism is anti-Semitic because it denies to Jews what every other people enjoy on its own, as is the famous statement by Chuck Schumer in 2017. The idea that all other peoples can seek and defend their right to self-determination, but Jews cannot, is anti-Semitic. I'm sorry, but this is not true. Simply false. Do Kurds, Kashmiris, Tamils, Basques, to name a few, have their own states? Moreover, if we deny the Kashmiris' demand for statehood, will we be labeled a racist, a bigot? Argument number two is a variation on that. It says, okay, they may not have had a state, but now they have a state, don't oppose it. And our argument, I think, is very important. It is to try to move the state from an ethnic nationalist one into one of civic nationalism. To quote Jamal Dalhas, we do not deny Israel or its right to exist as a home for Jews. We are simply saying that we want to base the existence of the state not on the preference of Jews, but on the basics of equality. The state should exist in the framework of equality and not in the framework of preference and superiority. And again, the third argument is, it looks like anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism reside in the same person. No, I want to give you a slight history lesson. If you know, those who were great advocates of the Jews to go to Israel were advocates of preventing them coming to their own country. If you recall, Arthur Balfour in 1905, he wanted to pass the Aliens Act, which restricted Jewish immigration to the United Kingdom. But at the same time, in 1970, he says, we're very happy if the Jews go to Israel. Policy, and the same is true with the US administration too. They don't want the kind of preponderance of Jews in their own countries. They would like to ship them off to somebody else. The third, and I think I may ruffle some feathers, unconditional Western support for Israeli aggression. This can nowhere be clearer seen than in the very split across the UN system, laying bare all its contradictions and discrimination. And I will give you just one example again from the Solidarity website itself. For her part, I quote, Security Council President for the month, Barbara Woodward, United Kingdom, said, the 15-member body remains fully committed to pursuing a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace in the Middle East in line with international law. In international law. See, the arguments tie themselves up in knots, frustration and doublespeak prevail, so in desperation, I return to poetry. Mine this time, apologetically. Solidarity is not only the exposure of wrongdoing, the unequivocal laying bare of guilt, it is also the recognition of complicity, the acknowledgement that we can do better, that we must do more. And I offer this poem for the people of Palestine to look for us to look internally as well. I think we are complicitous more than we know. Shame on them and shame on us, I say. And excuse me, but I use say if I'm referring to the Gaza physical space, and Gaza if I'm referring to the metaphorical space. Haggai says, killed, maimed, destituted, disappeared. Where has the world's humanity gone? New forms reworked imperialism elsewhere, except Palestine, where settlers colonize still. The global north creates and repeats Gaza, genocide, annihilation, hell, they warn and justify. The right to self-defense of murderers killing children is upheld by arms business, money, power, votes. That's an open book. They have no moral high ground anymore and only brute force and a white consensus that other lives do not matter. And of course, they consider some Semites to be the lowest of the low. Enough of that. Hypocrisy without a mask to hide its shame. Follow us or else, they say. And bribed or bullied, we agree, confining ourselves to solidarity moments, going thus far and no more. Do we really believe that we, the huger than huge majority, the overwhelmingly ethical, the absolutely legal, are powerless to do more than this mere looking on in horror? It's not easy, but our global shame is this shallow sham. Shame on the world for condoning, opposing yet reinforcing murder genocide abroad, while at home paying lip service with business as usual after that. The killing becomes stronger. Our need to defend ourselves as humans stinks to high heaven and the scorched earth as children die. This grotesque division of labor between them and us as them, meaning business. Meaning business, not so usual, meaning Mondays we protest during lunch breaks. Perhaps besides their power, their threats and the Kafkaesque UN dance we never fail to fail, our skeletons hamper our ability to be human, to rise above the filth of geopolitics, the scum of deals. Gaza is our graveyard too. Can we excuse our killers in the north and ask for justice for their killers in Palestine? Israel's right to defend itself, the fear that Palestine's existence is a threat that must be rooted out. We agree that this is wrong, a Western sanctioned travesty of racism renewed, unfair, abhorrent, shocking, but we are small. What then of our forever hero prince, our savior who liberated Lanka, who could not sleep because of Tamils in the north and the sea to his south? Let's measure similarities, tether differences meticulously. Human rights are one, not one for us and two for them. Let not Gaza festering lie within our global shame. We fought a dirty war, publicly deny atrocities, looking survivors in the eye who lost their kin, their homes. How many times can we speak this lie and yet blame Israel and Hamas, condemn terrorists that we other? Before we realize our Gaza is theirs, theirs is ours, albeit on a hugely different scale. Right? Criminalize a religion, lock them up under the ICCPR. Shame on them, we know. But there is no justice anywhere, alas. So they will destroy till they choose to stop, aided by their Western friends, until we make them cease. New categories are formed. Uninhabitable by design, wounded child, no surviving family, booby-trapped food, C4 sandwiches, weaponized against children to beggar language beyond the human tongue. Yet our own record doubles again the global shame. As Palestinians flee or are forbidden, Sri Lankans take their place. 10,000 work Israeli farms, 20,000 more in the pipeline of blood. Good jobs, fine perks, but who pays their price? Whose solidarity now? Should we not think this through a little more? A little deeper to the bone of this injustice and its pain? Is not our shame to profit on the poison fruit of this godless slaughter without end? If Palestinians came to take our jobs, vacancies drenched in blood, would we agree it's merely economics? Unless we do more, do what it takes, make this our global cause, and do not rest, Gaza will be scorched. Cliches have their place. Pull out all the stops, stop all business as usual, do not play the game. Until there's peace with justice in Gaza, until the murderers are tried and punished, Gaza will be our shame. Our humanity lies in Gaza now, barely breathing. They resist with the diamond of their being, frail yet courageous, unbowed. We make powerful statements. Their very lives are humanity. This too is unequal, unjust, but there it is. Thank you.